He laughed before he even had the words. It was that small, stupid sound, half a bark, half a smirk, made by men who had convinced themselves the world still ran on old jokes. The checkpoint was a rattle of sandbags and concrete jersey barriers under a hot, indifferent sky. The man swaggered up to the barrier like the whole road belongs to him. He peered over the top, saw the soldier on duty, and chuckled. She didn't laugh. She was wearing the standard-issue Army OCP, with a single, precise braid disappearing under her patrol cap. Her hands were steady on the rail, eyes flat and disciplined. A rifle hung by her hip, but more than that, the way she held herself, the straight shoulders, the tiny crease at the corner of her mouth, declared that whatever came at her would be measured and answered. That posture unnerved him because he expected play, not challenge. "You lost, sweetheart," he said, voice heavy with cheap bravado. Her name tape read Reyes, and there was a familiar rectangular patch over her left shoulder that said United States Army. But the man didn't see the letters. He saw the hair, the uniform like a costume. He assumed the story he wanted. Major Lena Reyes did not correct him. She had spent 20 years learning the calculus of escalation, when to speak, how much to reveal, and when to let someone flail on their own ignorance until fatigue or fear finished the job for her. She stepped forward, palms relaxed, the kind of calm that had been paid for in faraway dust and long nights. "You on foot or vehicle?" she asked, voice even. "Vehicle," he said, mock serious. "I go where I want." "ID and manifest," she said. The man fumbled like he didn't expect compliance. He produced a driver's license, a smeared wallet, and attitude. He slid the papers over a concrete lip as if theatrics would replace credentials. Major Reyes inspected the license, her thumb brushing a fold as if testing if the paper was real. Her eyes flicked to the manifest and then to the convoy's tarp billowing in the afternoon wind. "You hauling supplies or passengers?" she asked. "Both," he said. He laughed again, that same small, dangerous sound. "You city folks, what do you know about this road anyway?" Before she could answer, a low engine growled down the approach. A black Humvee, unmarked, no unit insignia, rolled up with a courtesy slow that spoke of trained drivers. The three men inside wore the relaxed, confident posture of men used to being lethal when needed. One of them stepped out. A man in late 30s, sunburned lines at his eyes, a Navy SEAL's gait that carries the ocean in its silence. He had been watching. He had seen the way the man mocked the guard. He walked up with the measured certainty of someone who had watched a problem and already framed a solution. "Major Reyes," the SEAL said, voice low and respectful. He flattened a hand to his chest and then a quick professional nod. He didn't need to announce his team. His presence spoke for them. The mocker's gaze slid from Reyes to the SEAL and back, like someone whose map just lost its legend. He barked a laugh that failed to find a place to land and then tried to double down. "Look at that, we got ourselves a... What are you? Security? Cute." The SEAL's hand barely twitched when he spoke. "Major Reyes," he said, slower this time, as if clarifying a currency. "We were expecting a staff officer to clear this route. You in charge here?" The air shifted. A dozen small things snapped into place in the man's mind. The respectful tilt of the SEAL's helmet toward her, the way the Humvee's radio antennas bent like reeds, the ripple of attention from other soldiers who had been watching the exchange. He swallowed. The laugh dried up. The swagger failed to reassert itself. What had been a cheap performance in front of a woman now looked like a blind gamble against a uniform that carried teeth. "Oh," he said, "a major." It wasn't just the word. It was the respect, the realization that he had stepped in front of someone who had authority he couldn't buy or mock away. He froze, because suddenly the consequences of his bravado were no longer hypothetical. Major Lena Reyes allowed the pause. She could have made a speech about respect, about discipline, about the cost of underestimating people based on how they look. But the road did not require a lecture. It required decisions. She took the papers, signed them with the same calm she used to sign orders on nights when sleep was a currency she couldn't afford, and handed them back. "You have my clearance to proceed," she said to the driver. "Keep to posted speed and don't stop within 300 meters of any structure." "And you," she said, voice soft enough so that the hum of the road didn't carry it away, "keep your opinions to yourself. They won't do you any favors here." As their convoy rolled away, the man watched them go, his jaw working. He had been taught one kind of power, the power of volume and intimidation. He had encountered another, the quiet power of a rank backed by competence and history. It looked different, and it scared him. It was a small thing, the way the scene played in the comings of that base, a proof that the world could still surprise men who thought it knew the rules. For Major Reyes, it was a day like many others, a route clearance, a check of supply lines, a polite collection of signatures, and an eye kept on hazards. For the SEAL team, it was a short detour on a longer mission. But those 3 words, Major Reyes, lodged in the man's mind and in others who watched. Respect is a social contagion. Once a contagion starts, it transfers faster than rumor. Lena walked through the compound that night with an old duffel and a new exhaustion. Her rank wasn't a costume. It had been privacy and sacrifice, bitter cakes of protocol, and the occasional salve of promotion. She'd been a lieutenant at 26, feeling the fire of being in command, thinking it meant being invincible. Time taught her different things. Time taught her to carry authority lightly and use it as one would use a scalpel, precise, measured, and never for show. At the mess, a group of junior soldiers clustered around a table, relacing jokes like they were talismans against fear. Several of them had watched the exchange earlier. A young corporal there, eyes still bright with the reckless confidence of 22, nudged his buddy and asked the question that hummed right under the skin of that night. "She a real major?" he asked, voice half wonder, half calculation. "You kidding?" the kid's friend said. "She's got the cadence and everything. Major's major." Lena heard the chatter and didn't try to hide it. She had learned that secrecy breeds myths, and myths get dangerous. She approached and sat with the group. When soldiers saw their seniors move, they listened. The corporal straightened, suddenly on point. "Major," he said, a touch unsure. "Sir, we got a laugh earlier. We didn't mean—" She waved him off. "You didn't do anything outside normal curiosity," she said. "But you did something important. You watched. Good soldiers watch." He relaxed. "Thanks, ma'am." There it was again, the small ritual of correction and growth. A career is a series of tiny right turns and bigger hard lessons. Lena had collected both. Later, a quiet moment alone, she opened her cinch pack and found the photograph folded at the bottom. It was cracked and faded. A younger Lena with salt-stained hair, a different uniform, a different country in the background. Beside her, the faces of comrades who had been dusted away by time. She traced the edge of the image and felt a line of memory that went back to a darker, simpler time, when sarcasm had been currency and vengeance a tempting coin. Someone tapped the doorframe. Petty Officer Jonah Clarke, the SEAL team leader. He slipped inside like a shadow that didn't want to disturb light. "Major," he said, almost reverent this time. "You good?" She smiled, a small thing. "Tired," she answered, "but good. Thanks for the assist." He shrugged. "We were in the area, saw the way he was running his mouth, figured we'd keep traffic moving." "You could have just driven on," she said. He looked at her then, a man who had seen whole chapters of history heated in a whisper. "We don't leave people standing alone," he said, "not when we can help." The words were simple, and they were honest. That was perhaps the strangest part of a life built in uniforms, the line between services that were supposed to be rivals in theaters of ceremony, but in practice became each other's lifelines. "Why the formal nod?" Lena asked. "Why make a thing of it?" Jonah sat on the footlocker. "Because sometimes people forget that rank isn't about the letters. It's the responsibilities behind them. When you called the route, you took that responsibility. We acknowledged it. Because on some roads, acknowledgement saves lives." She nodded, a hard, grateful nod. It meant more than protocols. It meant a tacit agreement between soldiers about what mattered, between services, between men and women who had been shaped by different codes into similar shapes. Word travels differently in a base than in a town. There are fewer corners, and the stories are repeated until the truth is polished like a coin. The man who mocked her kept his head down for days. Men who once had elbowed him into bravado now checked manifests and kept their eyes forward. The junior soldiers who watched the scene learned a small and important lesson about leadership. It looks like quiet competence, not volume. But power must be practiced as well as shown. A week later, during a convoy through a contested valley, an IED erupted close enough to throw dust like a cloudburst. Vehicles halted, radios spiked with panic, and for a moment, the world narrowed to adrenaline. Major Reyes was forward, eyes scanning for secondary devices. She didn't move like a caricature of a leader. She moved like someone who had stood against worse and come out with more tools than fear. The convoy's commander called for a halt, and Jonah Clarke's SEAL team moved up to help secure the exit lanes. It was the same compact team that had shown up at the checkpoint, the same delicate choreography that made men reliable to one another. Amid the smoke and the metallic scent of spent gunpowder, the soldiers formed a ring, a living barrier against whatever else may have been waiting. "Major," Jonah said into his radio, "we're getting movement on the high ground east. Looks like at least 3 hostiles prepping." Lena didn't hesitate. "Mark it. 2-man sweep the ridge. I want eyes up. Use thermal. No engagement unless you see the flash." In the minutes that followed, men moved with a practiced calm so precise it felt almost ceremonial. A soldier on the ridge caught flickers of heat, shadowed shapes shifting like small beasts. A burst of fire, a returning volley. The world answered with noise. When it was over, when the last shot died like a tired animal, the convoy breathed again. Casualties were light because the response had been measured. Men who had mocked her earlier now accepted the orders she gave with the same gravity with which they accepted bullets. Later, as they assessed damage and resupplied, the same corporal from earlier approached her with the steady, earnest face of youth turned toward its future. "Sir," he said, "not bothering with half measures now. I don't know what I was thinking before. He faltered, searching for a word that would fit what he'd seen. "Lead," she offered. He nodded. "Lead. Thanks, ma'am." The days that followed were ordinary in their dangers, convoys, checkpoints, the small mathematics of survival. But something had shifted in the fabric of that base. Respect had a direction now. It flowed toward competence, regardless of gender or accent. The man who mocked did not transform into a saint, nor did the world reorder itself overnight. But the small, stubborn fact remained. When the SEALs called her Major, they didn't do it to humiliate. They did it to recognize the exact one thing that kept their teeth sharp and their plans true: leadership that was real. Major Lena Reyes kept her rank on her chest and the weight of it in her hands. She wore it like a set of tools, sometimes heavy, often necessary. She didn't relish the attention. She didn't need it. She needed the readiness that comes with being seen when it matters. And sometimes, on a quiet night, she would unfold the faded photograph, trace the faces, and remember that authority is not a thing to flaunt. It is a thing you earn, protective and practical, a bridge between people who are willing to be put in harm's way for the sake of others. The man who once mocked the female guard never did speak to her again, not in the belonging way he had tried before. Perhaps he learned something about the thin skin of bravado. Perhaps he didn't. But in a place where every decision is counted in lives and broken metal, there was one lesson that stuck like a pin in a map. Measure people by what they do, not how they look. When the SEALs called her Major, they didn't just change the man's joke, they changed the conversation. And by changing the conversation, they made the road a little safer for everyone who still had to travel it. If you enjoyed this real military-style story, smash that like button and subscribe for more intense battlefield tales every single day.